I feel like the best events are the ones where people are talking about it long after the event. So I would probably personally start with that goal. Like, how do I make this something that people talk about and already pencil into the calendar that they want to do it next year? And I don't have to do that much marketing because they're talking about it constantly, and I have more people in year 2 than came in year 1.
Jay Clouse.
Justin Moore.
How you doing, man?
My best friend.
Yes.
I'm doing well. I'm actually feeling really great. I think this might be the most I've enjoyed an event experience that I can remember.
Dude, extremely same, actually.
Really?
Because I've maximized time just like hanging with people.
Yeah. It feels like, I feel like anytime you go to any event, it's this feeling of like anxiety around, am I going to do the best I can to get the most out of this? Am I doing the best? You know, it feels like a finite, time-bound opportunity that you can either do well or not. And I'm not white knuckling this and like trying to do the best, but everything is naturally flowing in a really positive way. Also, ConvertKit, this is your second year at Craft and Commerce?
It is.
Also my second year at Craft and Commerce. Super impressed by how they think through programming and the way they pile on extra nice things for attendees, but also for speakers.
Like this?
Like this.
Like this brand new podcast studio they've created?
Brand new podcast studio. I think they're very thoughtful about the amount of programming, the makeup of the programming. The people on the main stages are prepped really well, and it isn't like people pitching their thing. Like, it is like practitioners sharing things that they're learning and doing. I appreciate the balance of all of it. And then as a speaker, give me the opportunity to meet other speakers in a couple different ways. Headshots we got last year.
Yeah. Dude.
As like a complimentary thing. It's literally the headshot that I use on everything now. So yeah, I'm really enjoying this event.
You know, speaking of events, I wanted to actually talk about my new event called the Sponsorship Strategy Summit, which we're planning for next year. And I'm feeling quite stuck on it, actually.
Really?
Yeah, a bit stuck, because I've talked with quite a few people here, and everyone is very opinionated about what you should do and the programming style and all these things. And I feel a bit stuck because somehow I feel like I may be thinking too small, you know, because it's like, part of it is like there's so much excitement and energy of anyone that I talk to. They're like, that's a great idea. I would come to that, actually. And so it's like, you know, I've talked about the fact that we're considering like 100 to 150 attendee kind of cap. And it was specifically, it's designed intentionally. Like, I want it to be a very much kind of a workshop-y feel. I haven't mentioned this anywhere publicly, first time, but like, I want it to be outcome focused. I want it to be, you walk away, every attendee walks away with a fully vetted pitch.
No events do that. By the way.
Yeah. So like fully vetted, fully vetted pitch. I want there to be stations where you can like get your media kit made or optimized with someone on our team. I want to do a Shark Tank style pitch roast event with brand representatives. The winner gets a deal. I think I already got a sponsor, actually, someone lined up for this from here, which is amazing. And so it's like, those are all things that it feels like a lot of people would be excited about. And so part of me thinks like, maybe I'm thinking too small. But like, on the one hand, I think the larger the attendee size, the harder it is to do things like that, you know?
I know next to nothing about events.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you my assumptions and how I think about it, and we'll just kind of go from there. My assumption is there's probably like a barbell situation with events where below some number of people is optimal, and then above some number of people is optimal, both from an experience and economic standpoint. And I bet there's a middle ground that's kind of awkward. So when you say like 150 people, I'm wondering if that's beyond the first threshold and not quite at the larger scale threshold, where like you might lose the ability to do things that you could do when it's even smaller, but it's smaller than it could be based on the experience it has to be for that number of people. You know what I mean? Like if it was 40 or 50 people, you personally could ostensibly spend time with everybody there. At 150, that's not true.
Right.
So if you have to design the experience for 150 people, would that experience be the same if it was 400 people? And these are arbitrary numbers. I'm just saying that's what I would be thinking through is like, why that number at that number, does it preclude me from doing things that I could do if it was smaller? And does it open up the opportunity to do something bigger?
There's a reason that your brand is called Creator Science, because you just spit some hot scientific flames onto this SM7B.
Every time we do an event like this, we do a dinner for the lab, and that's like 20 to 30 of us. And I think to myself also, like, man, it'd be dope just to like have an event for the community. Not all 200 people would show up. It'd probably be like 50 to 100 people. And then I go down this rabbit hole of thinking, okay, well, what's the model of that? Am I charging community members a ticket price, or should I bake it into membership, knowing that not everybody's going to do the event? And then I think, well, if it's going to be ticketed, why not just make it bigger? I have the audience to support it. And then I think, well, if I'm going to do a bigger style event, I should probably assume that I'm going to do multiple events, because you're probably not going to make money or that much money in years 1 through 3 on the event itself. But it's a big brand builder. And if you're going to do that, that's probably with the assumption that you're building an asset that could be sold. And so every time I start thinking about like doing a small lab event, it becomes, do I want to build a large scale conference to sell? And then I think, no, I don't want to do that. And then I don't know what the model is for the smaller side. And I say, actually, the status quo is fine. But yeah, I think I have thought about these, like the size thing in particular. But what I love that what you said was you want it to be outcome focused, because like no events are like that. Like the events are, we want you to walk away with takeaways and feeling transformed and whatever. But there's never like, this is an artifact that we promise when you come, you will leave with this. An artifact or a very specific outcome, which I think is really compelling to say, hey, block your calendar, buy a ticket, come out here. If you put your butt in the seat, we're going to walk you through the process, and you're going to come out the other side with this thing. It's like a condensed cohort-based course live. And this all sounds revolutionary, but it's like the way humans have taught and learned for forever, So I think it's cool.
One thing I definitely, hallway conversations that I've heard many times, not here, but other conferences that there's been conferences that I've attended multiple years in a row, and I'll hear the conversations where it's just like, it's different. It's different now. It's gotten bigger. The vibe's different. Previously, like, I come from the kind of influencer YouTuber type sphere. And so it's like, oh man, previously, like all the creators were just walking around the hallway and you could like run into them and talk and all that stuff. And now everyone's behind closed doors and you can't really see it. And it's this like exclusive thing. And so it's like, I feel like there is some sort of thing where it's like, as something gets larger, it loses some.
It's about expectations.
Yeah.
Like if the expectation wasn't, I'm going to run into this influence in the hallway, and the expectation was, I'm going to see this person, but I can't access them, then they wouldn't be upset.
Yeah.
But when the expectation is set and then the experience does not live up to it and changes, that's the issue.
The problem, though, is that it was never an explicit promise. It was like that was just the culture or the dynamic that developed organically from it being an intimate event.
Yeah.
And just by the nature of like negative experiences that those people had, they had to introduce new guardrails to like not protect, but like kind of, because some people can be not great, in those types of circumstances.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think about that kind of stuff. And it just, and so it's like I try to think like I want to balance the like maximal impact goals that I have with the outcome goals that I have, and not trying to create perverse dynamics for the attendees.
Yeah. So you want tell me about the economics you want from the event. You don't have to tell me like how much money you want to make from it. My question is, do you want it?
I just don't want to lose money. That's like the main thing. I would like to make money, but like I would mainly. So okay. Here's another thing I struggle. I'm just gonna get real honest here. Is that, I talked to some of the folks here, not at ConvertKit, but some other folks who run a conference, and they said we lose money. We lose money every year, but it's like a loss leader. Like we get clients from it and all this stuff. It's like a conscious thing, right? And so, part of my the economics of this whole thing is like, I don't want to make an event where it feels like a giant sales pitch for the next thing. I don't want that. But at the same time, I feel very strongly that the ongoing coaching that my team can provide directly to you, that is the most exciting model for me, like moving forward into the future, rather than, okay, I take you through this course, you learn the fundamentals, that's great. See, I'm never going to talk to you again. Having the ability to like continue to impact people on an ongoing basis with tricky deals, that feels so exciting to me to help continue to support people. And so I would love to be able to have some sort of offer at the end of the conference where it's like, hey, we just like helped you get all these outcomes. And like, now here's an offer, an amazing offer. to work with us for a whole year or something like that, right? And so I just feel friction of like doing that in a way that feels heart-centered and not like, oh, like if you don't join this, you're not part of the cool club. It's like, I don't know. What do you think about that?
Real quickly, remember your first podcast episode, your first YouTube video, your first blog post? Think back to how it felt to hit publish on that early piece of content. Now, look at how far you've come. Your content has transformed, and so have you. But has your email marketing platform kept up? Do you even have one? Enter this episode's sponsor, ConvertKit, which is the email marketing service designed specifically for creators like you and for me, because I use it and I love it. Whether you're crafting newsletters, managing subscriptions, or sending updates, ConvertKit grows with you. With easy integration for your blogs, your podcasts, your YouTube channels, and your e-commerce stores, ConvertKit ensures that your email marketing works as hard as you do. Look, I'm gonna be real with you. When you press publish on platforms like YouTube or TikTok, you're kind of at the mercy of the algorithm for your content's reach, right? And to prove it to you, I'm actually gonna pull up one of my recent Instagram reels. Okay, I'm gonna click the insights here. Okay, look at this. I have 11,300 followers, and this reel reached 301 accounts. So quick math, that is 2%, 2% reach. Contrast that with my average open rate in ConvertKit, which is between 40 and 45%. So which one do you want? 2%, 45%, 2%, 45%. Which one are you gonna pick? So take control with ConvertKit. Here you can own your audience relationships directly. There's no middleman, there's no unpredictable algorithm changes, just a direct line to your followers. ConvertKit isn't just another tool, it's a partner in your creative journey. So if you're ready to create with freedom, automate with ease, and engage your audience like never before, build a platform you own. Start with ConvertKit today at convertkit.com. That's convertkit.com. All right, let's get back to it.
Yeah, I agree with that. So the model for, I've had 2 interviews about events on the podcast, and that is the extent of my knowledge of events. And the first interview was very much beating the drum of it should be a 3-day event. It should be a transformational event that builds up to basically a sale of some high ticket program at the end. And that's where you make your money. Everything up to that, you hope to break even as much as you can on the cost, but you make your money on the offer on the back end. And then I spoke to somebody who was like, no, understand your economics, bake it all into the ticket, and don't make the event about being sold to from you or from sponsors. So I think there's a model for both. And I think as long as you're selling the event as you get an outcome at this event and people do get that outcome, anything on top of that is a bonus, and you can totally pitch whatever. And some people will be like, yes, that's good. And everyone else will be like, I got what I came for.
Yeah.
I think where events could go wrong is this like big rah 3-day thing where it's like, you're going to get this. And what you get is like increased hope of that. But sorry, you still have to do this thing. But I think the economics could work. And again, depending on the size of event that you want, that's going to filter for the size and scale of creator in some ways. And so if you wanted to do a bigger event, that's probably going to mean that the ticket price there is lower. And on average, fewer people are going to be qualified for your offer at the end. If you did the smaller event, you could make it more intimate, make the experience itself more premium, spend more time with everybody, appeal to a more advanced creator with more resources. And then I think that offer becomes a higher converting thing at the end too.
When I was talking about the ticket price that we were kind of envisioning, multiple people have told me like, that's way too cheap. And I was like, really? Like,
what price are you talking?
It was sub 1,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we were also kind of pegging it at some of the other conferences that, creator-focused conferences, that surprised me. I don't know, especially, I guess, because I was envisioning this as more of like a mastermindy type.
The beauty of your entire business is that the promise is so clear and so directly tied to an ROI. So like you have probably, would it be accurate to say higher price elasticity or lower price elasticity? You have less price sensitivity.
Less price sensitivity, yeah, that's probably
what we should
most
say.
accurate. Yeah.
Which is great. That gives you like a lot of opportunity. I mean, I feel like the best events are the ones where people are talking about it long after the event. So I would probably personally start with that goal. Like, how do I make this something that people talk about and already pencil into the calendar that they want to do it next year? And I don't have to do that much marketing because they're talking about it constantly, and I have more people in year 2 than came in year 1. And so I would be focused on the experience, which probably means you're going to have ideas that are like, it's going to cost more money. So how do you do that? Do you do that with more people and trying to sell more tickets? I would probably actually go hyper premium, try to get people who are aspirational creators who talk about how good this experience was. And now all the people that they're mentoring and talking to, they want to come in year 2.
When you say hyper premium, what does that mean?
You familiar with Capital Camp?
No. Was that the thing you did in Columbus?
It was in Columbia, Missouri.
Okay.
So it's Brent Beshore and Patrick O'Shaughnessy. They're like finance guys. And they do this event called Capital Camp that's probably less than 200 people. Ticket sales the first year were $5,000, and ticket sales now are like $10,000 a ticket for a couple of days. So they priced me out, but people rave about this event because like every meal is made by a Michelin star chef. Half of the event is not presentations or talking at all. It's like, we're doing this at a lake, and here are kayaks, and here's axe throwing, and here's like a riflery range. You know, it's like shared experiences, curating people. But, you know, they're not promising a specific outcome the way you are. If you're going to get that done, there's going to have to be time spent together.
Right.
But I do think events typically tend to overplan the programming side of things in terms of like teaching content. Because I've never been at an event and been like, I wish there were more talks. You know what I mean? It's always like, I wish there was more space, is what I'm always thinking at events.
Right.
So I think the one event experience I had that was great. Have I told you about my Alaska event experience?
I think you did, but tell me the story again.
So it was a co-working space in Alaska, and it was like small business owners. They would get the people of this co-working space and then fly in a couple of outsiders like me. And it was a 3-day event. There's like 40 of us. They also had like a chef who had cooked for Obama there that was like making our food. There were few enough attendees that every attendee also was involved in leading a session. So there was no hierarchy, which was great. One thing I like about being a speaker at events is, as an introvert, people now come to me, and I don't have to like work too hard to meet people. But an event like that, that's not true. But also, there's no ego. There's no like closed off rooms. You're sitting next to somebody at a session, and you're just having fun meeting them. They seem really cool. And then you go to the next session. Oh, they're speaking. Oh, they're an athlete for Red Bull, like snowboarding down a mountain in the backcountry, and they got hit by an avalanche and they overcame that. It's like, it was just crazy because everyone was so humble, but on the same level. So I think it makes more sense to start there and potentially get bigger over time than the inverse. You know, try to go big and more broad and then say, actually, I'm going to scale this down. But I also struggle with playing small by default most of the time. So maybe that's that story.
I'm going to pull this thread for a second. So going down the hyper premium, I don't know if I'll go hyper premium, but maybe let's say premium. If I were to court someone like you, well, you're coming because you're my best friend. But like if I was to court someone like you who is already doing sponsorships, who would find the value in going to an event like this, I mean, the programming would have to be different than what I just said, because pitching brands or crafting a pitch, you're probably already getting a lot of inbound, or maybe you're getting a healthy flow. What's in your brain of like what would be an outcome that you would hope to get out of an event like that?
I would want to make the operations smoother, and like, I mean, just the ultimate outcome is like more revenue and less time in your sponsorship operations would be what I would be interested in. But also, I have blind spots. Like if you have talked to enough people like me and you know, okay, you're doing sponsorships, but almost everyone in your position is forgetting to do, you know, follow-up reporting or this really simple process innovation that lands more repeat sponsorships. Like, I don't know what I don't know. So yeah, maybe I think, oh, I can get sponsorships, fine. But I'm sure I'm missing 3 steps out of your sponsorship wheel in my current process, probably because I'm unaware of them, you know? So I think maybe you change it a little bit, but probably a lot of it still holds. And the assumption isn't, you've never gotten a sponsor, I need to teach you how to get your first sponsor. And it's like, let's turn up the dial, because you're probably doing it really inefficiently, both in terms of what you're earning and how you're managing the process.
How much do you feel interaction with other attendees at a conference like that would be versus learning from me and my team and kind of the experts on the sponsorship stuff. Like, what element does kind of the community or the other attendees, like, does that matter? Because like a huge part of like this event, for example, is like I love just like hanging out and going to dinner, and like I do learn a lot from like what other people's businesses and things like that. But like, I guess I would imagine that the promise would not be explicit, that like, hey, you're going to learn a bunch about sponsorship operations or pitching or something from the other attendees.
I think what would be really frustrating is if you assumed it didn't matter, and then in the course of the event, I had a chance to interact with people, and my thought was, damn, I wish I had more time to talk to that person. That would be the bummer. And if you think that the people who are coming to the event are going to have that reaction of, I'm going to just want to talk to the other people that are here, I think you want to hold space for it.
The one fear I always had with my course that became a pro, or one that became something I was optimistic about, was I was fearful that people would join at wildly different stages of their journey, following levels, sponsorship revenue size, and then they would get put into a breakout room during the live cohort with someone who like had only ever done one deal or something for like $500, and people are like, "What the heck is this?" But what I often found was that the commonality, or the thing that was most interesting to people, was listening to people that were making good money on platforms they weren't on. So they found, a TikToker would like be in a room with someone who had a newsletter.
Totally.
Or
that
like
would
this,
totally happen.
This cross-pollination and things like that. And so that was a beautiful accident, I would say.
Yeah.
And so maybe it's something similar where it's like maybe the groupings that I could make would be around, not around sponsorships per se, but in terms of the way in which those people's businesses are structured.
And if it was a small enough number of attendees, you and your team could actually like really stack the deck and do that. The more people you have, the harder that matching exercise becomes. So that's another like aspect of how far do you want to go in curating the experience and stacking the deck in your favor, and where does that break with the number of attendees? Because that would happen for sure. I can't see a world where you invite people in and they don't interact. And when they do interact, they're going to be like, I want to ask that person more questions. So I do think you need to hold space for it and maybe even create opportunities for that to happen intentionally. I think things are also a little bit different depending on, is it the creator who's coming to the conference, or is it like someone else on their team? Because I think the creators are going to want to geek out on the creative side of things with each other. Whereas if it's someone on my team who's responsible for sponsorships, they're probably going to be here to try to like learn the thing, come back and give us the download. It'll be a little bit different. I don't know how common it is that somebody has like a sponsorships person, and whether that would be the attendee at some scale of, this is for creator businesses at this level. But I think that would change the experience a little bit potentially.
So I guess the balance is like, how prescriptive do we want to be about, I guess, the programming, but also if we're curating space outside of the programming. I guess the one also friction point is like, okay, if we do heavily curate it and say, okay, you're sitting with this person at this table during this thing or whatever, that there would maybe be resentment, like, oh, I don't want to like talk to that person. Like, why are they assigning me that?
You don't have to say that. Well, I don't know. You could say we curated this, or you can be like, this was set at random and here's your group, here are the rooms, whether that was intentional or not. But I don't know. It's hard. I think it's hard to like hit 100% on that stuff, but you're going to know some people where you know, like, I can make some magic by putting these two people together because I know enough about them that this is going to be really good. And those relationships are what persist after the conference and why people talk about it and come back. So again, if like you can stack the deck in that way, I think that's a big win.
One thing I'm also trying to figure out is like, how much am I actually doing anything? Programming, talking, coaching, versus being more of a host and going around the room and making sure, kind of floating in and out of different groups and conversations and things like that. Do you have any like sense on like that?
Again, I don't know much about this, but
you're saying that you're hedging a lot, and you've had some amazing insights.
but I haven't done it. Yeah. So like, I think they're like,
no, but you do a lot of virtual stuff, and it's like,
yeah. I think the more that you do put yourself in a position of teaching, because you know your and people coming here are going to know you and know that you know your I think you can really step into that power, and it would be a powerful brand building thing. I could see you also being a really humble person, facilitating and centering others, and that would be a really positive experience, but you're probably doing that at some cost to your own authority and ultimately like the outcome of this event. So I would definitely put yourself in a teaching position because you have a lot to share and people want to learn from you and it'll be good for the brand. But then, yeah, I would try to like float around and build as many connections and relationships as possible. But also you should not be running the ops of your event.
Well, I guess the conclusion is we don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know exactly how to run this event.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see what you do, and I'll be there.
Yeah.
I think in most new products, most new experiences, I usually tend to err on the side of let's do something on the more premium end to start. And then if that goes well and if I want to, move down market, make it more accessible over time. Because that's an easier progression to make with a product than the inverse. You know, it's like the Tesla model of cars. Like you make the really nice thing and then that funds the development of future things that also like from literal money and also the buzz and marketing around it. And the people who can't quite access that yet are aware of it. It's aspirational. They want to go. And then when it does become accessible to them, they're there and ready and excited. If you make a Ford Focus, they're not saying like, I want the luxury Ford Focus.
It's interesting though, because it seems like kind of the opposite that you do in like digital products where it's like,
disagree.
You actually want to be increasing prices, right?
Well, increasing prices, but not like there is the Ascension model, but from a product development and release standpoint, I think you want to release a more premium product first.
Yeah.
And then move down market.
That's true. So I did do that with the course, I guess. Yeah. And interesting. Well, I guess TBD for another day. But thank you very much, man. This was very fun. And where can people learn more about Creator Science?
CreatorScience.com.
That was easy. Great CTA.
And thank you to Kit for the wonderful in-person studio.
Yes. Incredible.
Kit.com, formerly ConvertKit. Check it out.